For Farm Fresh, there was Dutch Lady. Unfortunately, it is down more than half since the peak in 2018. And it's been flat since 2021. So I guess that's somewhat good news. But of course, it's nowhere near Farm Fresh returns over the past 5 years, that's for sure. Why in the world is this happening? And to be fair, qualitatively, I've not drank a Dutch Lady milk in a very long time. To me, it's usually Farm Fresh, right?
Yep. So we're going to be walking through you guys whether this is an opportunity or it is a value trap. So the first thing, very clearly, we see that their earnings down a lot compared to its pre-pandemic time. So pre-pandemic, they make
100 plus
100
million,
to
right?
140.
Average, yeah.
So for 2021, this is not 248 million. It's not coming organically. They disposed one of the land, which is related to, I think it's the Petaling Jaya.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to be covering about that later on. So this true earnings is actually around 93 million, which is still lower than pre-pandemic. And on top of that, previously there will be like lots of like funds that wants dividend from Dutch Lady, right? They will stay invested, but because they start to cut dividends,
Drop by 4 times, right?
Yeah. That's why there's a lot of like big funds, they dispose the shares of Dutch Lady. And we'll be looking whether they can do a comeback or not. So what actually happened, right, since 2018? Well, the first key thing was they actually proposed a cut in dividend and they want to fund a major expansion plan. So what is this major expansion plan? Is their Petaling Jaya's first factory, right? It's actually very old already.
Yeah.
So they need to do some sort of
yeah.
refurbishment. So their way of refurbishment is actually just to relocate every single thing in their plant to a new area.
Yeah.
So it is a big capex spend during that year. And they actually are preparing and designing this new plant in Banda Estate, which is around Negeri Sembilan, if I can recall correctly. Yeah. So you can see over here, the total number of like capex spend, 19.8 million. But actually in totality, they already say that they plan to spend about 600 million during that year. Then they did land acquisition in 2020. They start construction. Then there's work in progress in their construction. They do utility processing. So you can see it takes a lot of years, like at least 5 years to even 6 years to do this restructuring, relocation to new factory. And it also takes a lot of money. So you can see that in total, their capex actually, they spend about 713 billion just for all of these new things. Yeah.
Of course, not everything here presumably goes into this new building, right?
Correct,
but
correct.
This is just brought a gross figure.
Yes, exactly. And another thing that you need to know is that this new factory over here is actually much more bigger and they have a 2x production capacity versus the old factory. And what's interesting is that one production line is almost everything is automated. You only need just one worker for each production line. Sometimes you don't even need the worker to be there. Probably they are just there to inspect only to see everything is running smoothly. And the third thing is that they are kind of like a market leader in the dairy category. So they have about 27.5% market share in there and 42.1% market share in the liquid milk category and 34.9% in toddlers nutrition. So this is a very interesting data for you to know. And last but not least, unlike Farm Fresh, they don't have any upstream
Farm Fresh, like are breeding cows.
Yes.
Right.
Correct,
but
guys.
Dutch Lady, no.
Dutch Lady, usually they just import the milk, the raw material from elsewhere. So yeah, if you do a comparison, right, with Farm Fresh and also Dutch Lady, you notice there's a distinct difference. So the orange color one is their revenue for Dutch Lady.
Yeah, massive catch up, right?
Green one is Farm Fresh. Yeah, so you can see that Farm Fresh revenue is growing already over here. And if you look at their gross margin for Dutch Lady, it's still flat. I mean, previously it's quite high, like 38%. Right now it's 34%. Whereas for Farm Fresh, it is also kind of like muted. It's in fact dropping from 30% to 26.6%. Whereas for net income over here, you notice Dutch Lady is dropping while Farm Fresh is kind of like growing, but recently they are like muted already. So you already can tell that the market likes Farm Fresh because there's some sort of growth story, whereas for Dutch Lady, they are doing a lot of major restructuring, so that's why their earnings are kind of like flat and they are not investing in it. So the final thoughts actually over here is that their earnings are kind of like artificially depressed because of all of these accelerated capex that they've been spending for the past 5 years. So if you look at their cash flow, right, operating cash flow, it's still quite decent. It's quite healthy and it's almost like similar to its pre-pandemic times. It's only the profit figure that it doesn't look so nicer in the public's eye. So that's why the market don't like. And the second thing is they've spent out almost all of the money already in the capex, so there will be no more capex, and which potentially means that this dividend could be rising again. Yeah. So right now they have about like a 30% payout ratio, and in the future, right, previously last time pre-pandemic times they pay about 100%. So if let's say they go back to 100% payout ratio, I think fund houses will start to relook again in this company. So this will be an interesting re-rating factor for them. And the third one is that they somewhat have an appealing valuation. Right right now they're trading about 19 times price to earnings ratio, whereas for Farm Fresh, they are about 32 times.
Yeah, almost
so
double.
almost double already.
So I think that the other aspect, apart from reducing of capex, is it's actually a good thing. Personally, right, I prefer this business model over Farm Fresh, where you're actually trying to breed and milk and rear the cows itself, because it's just not efficient. So if they can really bring back the dividends and go back to pre-COVID, I think they will be. I mean, they're already more profitable, right, than Farm Fresh. I think they would not make Farm Freshers catch up so big.
Yeah.
But they do have to. The problem with Dutch Lady milk is that it tastes a bit more artificial compared to Farm Fresh. So we tend to forget, it's not just numbers and cents, right? It's also how retailers, just normal people taste the thing. And I don't know, when was the last time you drank Dutch Lady, right?
It's been a long time. Actually, I don't really
Correct.
drink milk for a long time already.
Yeah, but if you were to drink, that's not the first brand you think of, right? So I do think they need to improve some of the flavors of their milk, because I think it's important. However, what they have going for them, in addition to what we mentioned just now, is I do think they have a bigger sway in the M40, B40 market, which is kind of surprising, because Farm Fresh, serving more T20, let's say, you would think that the margin is higher, but it's actually not, right?
Yeah, it's
So
about
that's the tremendous opportunity that Dutch Lady has, and hopefully they are able to.
Yeah, they just need to go back to pre-pandemic times, and then everything will be fine. And last but not least is that you can see the Insti coverage is actually very, very minimal. And if you look at EPF's holding, right, previously they own about, I think it is 13%. Right now it is about 7%. Sorry. From 13% to 2%. So that is EPF. They are selling out, obviously, right, because EPF want dividends, right? So once they see the dividend cut, so they're out. Same for PNB. PNB last time they were around I think it's 18%. Right now it's about 8%. So that's like a 10% shave for this is also another institutions that want dividend. So if let's say a Dutch Lady start to repay more dividends again, I'm pretty sure that these two retirement funds will be coming back again. But that is just our own opinion. You may have a differing view on it. So yeah, that's about it for Dutch Lady. Hope you guys learned something over there. And if you want to get more ideas on companies that we find interesting, or at least have multi-bagger potential, you can check it out inside FIRL Pro. It is where we share our analysis on companies that we find interesting. So just to share with you guys, with this 3 model portfolio, we have the Malaysia over here, which is up 39%. Global portfolio is up 20%. And the boring portfolio, which is dividend focused, it is up 11%. So if you look at these companies over here, it is where we covered each of them in this model portfolio. So KGB is in the Malaysia portfolio, Futu is global, and Valesto, it is the boring portfolio. But if you want to know about everything about this company, whether it's their business model, their prospects, their risks, their management, some of the management, right, it is when we meet them one-on-one. So we get even more information which is not available to the public. Everything is inside over here. It's basically like an encyclopedia. For companies.
Encyclopedia also, it's like an AI agent for you in a way, but we are the AIs, I guess. We help you dig data that unfortunately the internet does not have. For example, a meeting with management, a meeting with suppliers, their staff, interviewing them, things like that. It's hard to get, right? Hard to get information, and that's where a lot of our clients see value.
Yep. And if you want to get a taste, you want to see how we do our write-ups, how we do our management note, we have a free sample. The links will be in the description and comments. And that's about it for today's video. See you guys next week.